Chapter 6. Success and Failure. One night, the rain fell steadily outside the windows of my laboratory. The cold November air chilled me to the bone. I could hardly believe it myself, but I was finished. I collected the instruments around me and tried to bring my creature to life. My candle was nearly burnt down. I felt weak and tired. Then, in the flicker of the half-light, I saw the creature open his dull yellow eyes. A breath escaped his lips. His arms and legs moved. He was alive. Almost at once I began to cry. They weren't tears of joy, though, as you might expect. No, I cried with misery and regret. "What have I done?" I cried out. "What a disaster!" I had chosen his part so carefully, but it had all gone so terribly wrong. How can I describe the horror I felt? I had seen him before I brought him to life, but I had not seen that he was so ugly. Now he was alive, and there was nothing more I could do but be sorry for my actions. His limbs were the right size, but his watery, pale eyes were awful. His yellow-looking skin barely covered his muscles and veins. His hair was black, even flowing, and his teeth were white and pearly, but his lips were thin and black. I had spent 2 years building this creature. Now that I was finished, the glory of my dream disappeared like the light from my candle. My heart filled with horror and disgust. I couldn't bear to look at him. I rushed out of the lab and threw myself on the bed. Rest did not come easily. My dreams were awful. They were full of terrible pictures. My poor, suffering mother and sick Elizabeth. When I woke up in a terrible sweat, the monster was standing above me. He made a noise, maybe an attempt to speak. Then he held out one giant hand to grab me, but I ran out of the room as fast as I could. I ran down the stairs, out the door, and into the street. I stopped to see if he was following me, and then I ran off into town. I spent the rest of the night walking the streets of Ingolstadt, listening for footsteps behind me. What did he want from me, the awful creature? The frightening monster of my own creation haunted me that night. Every noise scared me and made me think the body which I had so wrongly given life was about to catch me. I imagined his big, awful hands around my neck. How had everything turned out so bad? My dream had turned into a living nightmare. I walked through the night in the pouring rain. I didn't dare to return to my apartment. Eventually I ended up at an inn on the other side of the town, where a Swiss coach was parked. The door flew open, and there stood Henry Clerval, my dear friend. "Victor!" he shouted. "I'm so glad to see you. What luck! How could you have known to meet me in my carriage?" I forgot that unhappiness for a moment, and the monster vanished. The cool morning air blew all of my mistakes away. For the first time in months, I thought about something other than my experiments. "Henry!" I gave my friend a big hug. "No, I didn't know you were coming. What are you doing here? I'm so happy to see you." He smiled. "My father finally allowed me to come to school. Can you believe it?" "That's wonderful," I replied. "How is my family? You must have brought news from the home with you. How is Elizabeth? My father? My brothers?" "Not to worry, Victor," he said. "They're well. They wish you would write more, though." He punched me playfully on the shoulder, and then took a good look at me. "My, you are thin and pale. Are you sick?" I had been working day and night on an experiment. I forgot everything that had happened the night before and quickly said, "Let's go back to my room for a nice breakfast." We took Henry's carriage back to my apartment. As we approached the building, a fear came over me. What if the monster was still there? What would I do then? Henry couldn't see it. What would he think of me? The carriage stopped in front of my door, and Henry said goodbye to the driver. We gathered his bags and stepped onto my front hallway. "Wait down here for just a minute," I said. I need to clean up quickly." "Oh, Victor, I don't care about a mess. I'm tired and I want to sit somewhere that doesn't move." I begged. "Please, just 1 minute, okay?" I darted up the stairs. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I arrived at my door. Gathering up all my courage, I threw it wide open. I expected a ghost, knowing now that such fears would haunt me. A long sigh escaped my lips as I found the rooms to be empty. The awful monster was gone. "Henry!" I shouted down the stairs. "Come on upstairs." The woman in charge of my apartment brought us a large breakfast. We ate together, and Henry told me all about his trip. The coach from Geneva was quite an adventure. He went on and on about funny people he had met along the way. I smiled and listened to his stories. Oh, how I missed my friend Henry. After spending so many months locked up in my laboratory, I'd forgotten the simple joys of friendship. After we were finished eating, I couldn't sit still. Something in me shook loose, and I couldn't control myself. I had too much energy. I jumped over chairs, waving my hands around wildly and giggling uncontrollably. My strange behavior made Henry very uncomfortable. "Victor, sit still for a minute. You're making me nervous with all your twitching and stuff. What's the matter with you?" "Nothing," I said. "I'm terrific." I started laughing and I couldn't stop. Then for a split second, I thought I saw the monster. "Do not ask me," I cried. I threw my hands over my eyes and screamed. "He knows," I yelled. "He knows. Oh, save me. Oh, save me." In my mind, the monster had grabbed me and was shaking me all about. I struggled against him, and then I fell down to the floor. Henry rushed towards me. He must have helped me to my bed, but I have no memory of it. I fell into a fever that lasted for some time. Henry took good care of me and decided not to tell my family right away because he knew they would be very worried. One could not ask for a better friend. Months went by, but I didn't notice. Terrible thoughts came to me in my dreams. Awful sights of the monster I created. Fear of what I had done and could never undo. I tossed and I turned night after night. Henry stayed by my side night and day. He fed me soup and read to me. He never held on, and there were days when I couldn't even sit up in my bed. My room became my entire world. My window, was the only way I knew the world was still there. Slowly, after many starts, I began to feel better. Germany was now in full bloom of spring. Birds sang in the trees and the flowers started to bloom. I could hardly believe that I had been sick all winter. Where did all the time go? What happened to the monster? What had I done? I pushed those thoughts out of my mind and tried to think about my life before my experiments. How I enjoyed being outside. How Henry, Elizabeth, and I had so much fun when we were children. Now, the weather being so nice, my mood had got a great deal better. "Henry," I said one morning, "you're so good to me. You were supposed to start school already, but you spent the whole season taking care of me." He smiled but didn't say anything. So I continued, "How will I ever pay back this kindness?" "There's no need," he replied. "All you need to do is get well. It's all that matters." He paused for a moment, and then said, "But there is one thing you can help me with." I shook under my sheets. Maybe he wanted to know about my lab. Maybe he saw the evidence of the monster somewhere. Maybe he knows everything. I couldn't bear it. If Henry found out, what would he think of me? Would he tell my family? Would they be disappointed in me too? Henry noticed my panic. He begged, "Please don't be upset. I want you to send a letter home. Your family wants to hear from you. They're worried about your health." I sighed. "Is that all?" I kicked my sheets and sat up in bed. "Of course. I don't want them to worry any more now than I'm so much better." Henry walked up to the table and said, "Here's a letter from Elizabeth. I'll go out for a while and let you read it by yourself." Henry smiled kindly at me, put on his hat, and left the room. I sat down at my table and slowly opened the letter, not knowing what to expect. It had been such a long time since I had read my letter from my family. My heart raced just thinking about how happy I was to hear from them.